Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Christmas season, hardworking American taxpayers are facing an economic crisis. American families have been suffering with record high inflation for the last 18 months. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, over the last couple of months, I've had an opportunity back home in Northeast Florida to talk to some of my constituents about the impact that these record high inflation prices are having on their lifestyles. One of my constituents from St. Augustine shared with me that her energy bill has already gone up 40%. 40%. The gas prices have limited her ability to see family and friends. And in spite of just celebrating her 80th birthday, 80 years old, she is now having to go back to cutting her own grass, to doing her own home repairs so that she can stay within her fixed budget. See, we think this inflation is bad for those who are working and hard-paying taxpayers. It's even worse for those on fixed income. In fact, I had an elderly couple tell us that these high prices have actually caused them, they were looking forward to their retirement, but the high food and high fuel costs have driven them to cut back on many essentials. And Mr. Speaker, this is not a small amount of money we're talking about in this inflation. We're talking about $700 a month. That's more than $8,000 a year out of the pockets, not only of hardworking, tax-paying Americans, but those elderly on fixed income. This is bad news for all of us, yet just the other day, President Biden boasted of slowing, quote, slowing price hikes earlier this week as a sign of good news for this holiday season. This is his exact quote. Inflation at the grocery stores, thank God, is beginning to slow. Prices for things like new clothes, television, and appliances are going down. That's good news for this holiday season. Well, Mr. Speaker, last I checked, food is up over 12%. Energy and gas are both up over 17%. Electricity is up 14%. Public transportation, which many of our working poor depend, public transportation is up 28%. Flour is up 24%. Chicken is up 14%. Eggs are up an incredible 43%. Finally, milk is up 14%. Everything is more expensive under this Biden administration. And you know why? Because this administration believes we can spend our way out of this problem. But that very reckless spending is what got us here in the first place. The value of the dollar cannot recover if we just continue printing money. In the last 2 years, what we've seen with one party, one rule in just 2 years, and I would ask people to just reflect back, if you can, to the economy that this country was enjoying in 2019, before the pandemic shut down our economy, before COVID destroyed an economy that was the best this country had ever seen. The Trump economy was growing, the GDP was growing at over 3.5%. Now, what do we face after one party, one rule for 2 years? Higher interest rates on our federal debt that's now at a record level, $31 trillion plus. We passed an American Rescue Plan that the Democrats gave us $1.9 trillion, over $1 trillion in Biden executive order spending. The Inflation Reduction Act, which is kind of a misnomer, obviously, spent another $745 billion. And then finally, most recently, another $500 billion for student loan cancellation. This spending is not sustainable. Well, the good news is that the American public chose not to accept this, and they put an end to one party, one rule. And come January, we will put an end to that. Hopefully, we can get back to that 2019 economy. But I tell you, in January, when the Republicans take back this majority, Mr. Speaker, we have got to start looking at, after we defund the 87,000 new IRS agents, we need to start looking at restoring America's energy independence. Because right now, today, Americans are gearing up to pay more for energy as they prepare for this holiday season in an attempt to heat their homes. And this energy crisis doesn't just impact us at the gas pump. All goods cost more because energy is consumed and more expensive when it's across every level of our supply chain. Meanwhile, the president continues to reject common sense solutions that could alleviate this energy crisis that we're facing. It's almost unconscionable that he sits on 4,600 drilling permits, will not allow them to be released. Instead, he restricts that possibility of American energy independence and goes to OPEC, hat in hand, asking for their assistance to pump more oil. Or he goes to authoritarian dictators like Maduro, asking for more Venezuelan oil. Then his Inflation Reduction Act, which is anything but, that's $745 billion. Instead of reducing inflation, is really a socialist climate deal that caters to very special interest groups. I'll give you just a couple examples. People who buy electric vehicles get tax credits. They're buying $60,000 plus vehicles, and we're asking hard-paying, tax-paying workers to help pay for those. Companies that use union labor get billions in green giveaways. Tech companies producing semiconductors got a special carve-out so that they can take their $24 billion of new taxpayer subsidies to the bank. Corporations can purchase new vehicles, new electric vehicles, and trucks on the taxpayer's dime. That's what we're doing with their money. Companies that have employed bribery, who are breaking the law and have to pay fines and penalties, they now get to take that off their book minimum tax, which that simply overturns the tax code's current prohibition on such benefits. Those should never be tax deductions. Not when you're paying penalties and fines for criminal behavior. U.S. energy independence impacts every area of our lives, but the president would rather solely blame this conflict on the Ukraine and not admit that he could have done more to bolster our energy independence. Instead, he's taken the tactic that we're now really at a national security level, we're in danger because our strategic petroleum reserves are at dangerously low levels. And we withdrew our strategic energy reserves and then sold that to the Chinese Communist Party. Americans all across this nation are still scratching their heads on that one. And yet the president recently spoke of the reduction in fuel costs. Gasoline is going down, and he's happy with that. Fact of the matter is, the national average for a gallon of gas is $3.52, a dollar more than when Biden took office. It was $2.39. $2.39 in January of 2021. His energy policy is an America last policy. And it continues to exacerbate the oil supply and demand crisis right here at home. Look, America was strongest when we had energy independence and we could rely on our own resources. Now, I can tell you that for our constituents who are depending on us in Congress to do great things for this country come January, we're going to have some real difficulties because it's not going to be one party, one rule. The Republicans won't have the same benefit of having the Senate and the White House that the Democrats have right now. So it's going to be tougher, but we have to make a commitment to America. And we did. We're going to do everything we can to make this economy stronger, everything we can to make this country safer, a country that is more free, and a government that is absolutely more accountable. That's our commitment to America. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.